Number one. Somebody want to volunteer to start? All right, Jesse. It all starts off easy, so maybe you want to volunteer for number one. So, what numbers could we plug in for x on number one to make all that stuff equal 0?
2.
Yep.
And -3.
2 and -3. Because 2 minus 2 is 0, and -3 plus 3 is 0. So 2 and -3. Just do the opposite. Okay, it's kind of like they factored it for us on 1, 2, and 3. And then on 4, 5, and 6, we got to factor it ourselves. All right. Lauren, you got the harder one. Let me write this down so we can talk about it. Actually, I might open this one up because I'm sure most people forgot how to do this. All right, does anybody think they remember how we did this middle one? Yeah.
Would you just, basically, you would just do 0, right? You would just do,
Just 2A, 2,
Well, for this one, okay, there was a pattern. If you forget the pattern, we want 4a minus 1 to equal 0, right? So, what would a have to be to make this equal 0? 1/4. So the pattern is, and there probably will be one of these on the test, so we do need to know this. So if it was just a minus 1, what would the answer have been? 1. But if there's a 4 or whatever right there, it's positive 1/4. You don't really have to do all this. I mean, you could, but that's a lot of work. So a could be 1/4. How about this one? Negative 9/3. But what's negative 9/3? Negative 9 divided by 3. It's just -3. Negative 9 divided by 3. And if there's an a out in front, I think Davin said this one. 0 is an answer. Because 2 times 0 is 0. Times whatever, it equals 0. So that is one of the answers. All right. Number 5. Okay, on 5 it says solve by factoring. They did not factor it for us like they did on number 1, so we got to do it ourselves. All right. Lauren, do you remember how this one worked? Okay, okay. I'm sure a lot of people forgot. Shh. So what goes into x squared? Like what times what? X times x. That goes in the front. And in the back, it's what times what multiplies into -10. Or just 10. Let's start with 10. What multiplies into 10? 2 and 5. But we have to have it in such a way that they add up to 3. So how do we use 2 and 5 to get 3? Yeah, -2 and positive 5.
Wait, are we doing number 4 and 5?
Oh, did I do the wrong one? Oops. Okay.
No, wait, keep going.
That's all right. All right, I'll leave the rest of it to you guys then. Numbers. That was 4. 5. That's not the answer, by the way. And finish off. Okay. So Abby on this one. So x is in the front. What multiplies into 7? 1 and 7. And how do we use those to add up to -6? Well, we got to use the 1 and 7 though. So how do I get this to equal -6?
-7.
Right. Yep, exactly. exactly. So it's plus 1 and minus 7. Now that's not the answer, that's just the factoring part. So the answer is kind of the opposite because it's what x values make these equal 0. So what could I put in for x here to make this 0?
7.
Yep. So it's 7 and
1.
negative 1. Because negative 1 plus 1 is 0.
So Mr. Jordan,
Hmm?
like, doesn't number 6 look kind of weird?
Okay, so how did we do number 6? Anybody remember that one? Take stuff out.
Oh.
So what goes into 8y squared and 2y? 2y. So remember you put 2y in front. Here, hold on.
8y cubed.
Is y cubed?
Yeah.
Not really. Interesting. Alright, so 2y comes out. What's left if I divide these by a 2y? 4y squared
I'm sorry, it's my
minus, what's 2y divided by 2y?
Oh, it's just y.
1. 2y divided by 2y
Oh, yeah, the y just moved by half.
is 1. Okay, so what's left in parentheses? This is called a square minus a square. You guys remember this? They're squares because they have square roots. What's the square root of this? 2y. What's the square root of 1? 1. So it just is 2y minus 1 and 2y plus 1.
And that's,
All that equals 0. So what y values would work for this? Negative a half, positive a half, and 0. Uh, 7 x squared equals 6. I feel like it wasn't too long ago we did this assignment. So 1 through 6 was like the first assignment. 7 through 10 is like the second assignment. Davin, do you remember how we solved these?
Would you want like a factor tree?
No, there's no tree there. So if it's just x squared, it's less complicated. We can just try to get x by itself. So how do I get rid of this square?
Probably just
No. What's the opposite of squaring?
square root.
Square root. Okay. So does square root of 6 simplify? No, because it's just 3 times 2. There's no doubles in it. There is something a little bit wrong with my answer. Okay, let me go over here for a second. Usually people forget this. I don't know how to get it in their heads. So if x squared is 9, what could x be?
it could be just be 3. Plus or minus.
Could be negative 3. So anytime you use the square root trick, it could actually be negative. Because a negative squared is also a positive. So you have to put a little plus or minus. All right, James, what should I do on this one?
Square root the x minus 4
Right, since this whole side is squared, I can go ahead and get rid of the square by square root.
and square root.
Not a real word, but that's okay. And then over here, the square and square root go away. And what do I have over here?
Square root
Almost
of 11.
plus or minus square root of 11.
And then add 4.
Right. To solve for x, we gotta get rid of this minus 4, so plus 4. Do these mix?
So
No.
it'd be x equals 4 plus minus 3.
So on number 10, what should we do first? What do you guys think? Divide by 25. 12 divided by 25 doesn't really work. You just leave it as a fraction. And then you have to square root it. And you have to remember it's plus or minus. So anyways, let's keep rolling here. Number 11. I guess on 10 you could, no, never mind. Just divide by 25 first. Okay, 11. I'm sure we forgot this one. We only did this one day. Completing the square. Okay, you guys think you might remember this one? What I did was, unlike the other ones, we actually want the constant on the other side. So you move that 7 over. And then what do we put in this blank right here? You do 8 divided by 2 squared. 8 divided by 2 squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So positive 16. But if you add 16 to one side, you're supposed to add it to the other side. To keep it equal. Alright. Why did we do that? Because this left side now is going to factor perfectly. It's a perfect square. What multiplies into 16 that adds up to 8? 4 and 4. So it's x plus 4 times x plus 4, or it's x plus 4 squared. A perfect square. That's why it's called completing the square. Negative 7 plus 16 on the right side is 9. So, Kenton, what should we do now if we're trying to solve this for x? How do we get x by itself? Now, how did we get rid of this earlier? Yeah. Yeah, we square rooted it. So, square root, we'll get rid of the square. And we get x plus 4 equals what? Not just 3, plus or minus 3. Anytime you use a square trick, you gotta do plus or minus. And then, right, to finish this, we would get x by itself, we would subtract 4. Now on this problem, we're not just going to leave it as negative 4 plus or minus 3, because we can actually solve that. What is negative 4 plus 3? Negative 1. And what's negative 4 minus 3? Negative 7. So those are the answers. All right, 13. 2x squared minus 20x minus 5 0. forgot about this one. Yeah, let's just skip 13 and 14. We didn't do the harder version of completing the square. Alright. So on, let's see, number 12, they already moved the 3 over for you. Oh, jeez. Yeah, but I'm going to do 12 with you guys, I guess. Are you dying? All right, how did I find the number that goes right there? I did that number divided by 2 squared. 5 divided by 2, it's getting really warm in here. You like it, I'm melting. 5 squared and 2 squared is just 25 fourths. It's kind of a mess, but I don't think we did one this hard actually. That's why I'm helping you.
Is this gonna be on the test?
No. But it will be an algebra too, so I thought it was worth our time probably. Okay, so what this is gonna factor to, what multiplies into this that adds up to this, it'll be the 5 over 2 and 5 over 2. That's where that came from. So it's actually like a fraction. Gosh, what a mess. 3 plus 25 fourths, that would be like 12 fourths plus 25 fourths, that would be 37 fourths. Alright, now this part you do need to know how to do this part. What do we do to solve for x here? Square root. So that gets rid of our square, which is good. And then this side, square root it. Does 37 have a square root? No. Does 4 have a square root?
Yes.
Yes, it is, and that is 2. So the top, we just leave the square root of 37. The bottom, square root of 4 is just 2. But when you do the square root trick, plus minus, and one more step. How do I get x by itself here? Minus 5 over 2. Okay, are those gonna mix?
No.
No, not really. They actually can, because they have the same denominator. You can put them together as one. You don't have to, but it's a little bit neater. These are the same thing. Alright, don't worry about that one. We'll save that for a couple of years down the road.
Are we skipping?
Oh yeah, skipping 13 and 14. 15. A, B, and C. You guys remember these? X squared plus 4x minus 1. I'm not going to write this one down. So when you're doing the quadratic formula, you need to identify A, B, and C. Case, what would A, B, and C be on number 15?
1 is A, 4 is B, negative 1 is C.
Right. No trick questions. A is 1, B is 4, C, was that right? C is negative 1. And then if you have to actually solve it, like later, and we're about to, you'd have to plug that into the quadratic formula. On 16, what would we need to do to find A, B, and C?
Plus minus 2x and minus x.
Minus 2 and minus x. It has to be in standard form for you to see the A, B, and C. So it has to be like the x squared and then the x and then the number, the constant. So you need to move everything to one side and have it in order. So how do I get rid of the 2 and the x on this side? Subtract them. Okay. Does any of this mix? 3x squared minus 2 minus x? No. And also, you'll want to put it in order. First the x squared, then the x, then the number. And then that's your A, B, and C. Uh-oh. What'd you do? Okay. Oh, shoot.
The discriminant.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that too. I forgot I skipped a lesson until I saw this section. I was like, oh, okay, we didn't.
You just.
No, let's solve it using quadratic formula. So I'm just going to change the directions.
So 17 through 24 was do quadratic formula.
Yep.
So
17 through 24. It's a lot of them, I know, but if you can get that in your brain, it'll be helpful later. Okay, 17, x squared minus 2x plus 1. Actually, because the directions on this part don't say you have to use quadratic formula, if you want to solve by factoring, I'm okay with that. But some of these do not factor at all, so it might not work. So let's use quadratic formula. Let's see. Brooke, what's my A, B, and C here?
1, -2.
Okay, and if I plug those in the quadratic formula, what would that be?
2 plus or minus square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 over 2 times 1.
Okay, yeah, so a couple things. Why didn't she put a negative right here?
Because it's a negative negative.
Because, yeah, negative b would have been negative negative 2, so that's positive 2. And why didn't she put a negative here? Because you forgot. Well, it's not necessary because when you square a negative, it'll come out positive either way. So you could put the negative there, but you need to put parentheses. Should come out as positive 4, not negative 4. Right there. So, yeah, you guys remember doing this, I'm sure. We did a couple days on these. So we did, let's see, this parentheses is just 4 minus 4, which is 0. So it's 2 plus or minus 0 over 2. So this one only has one answer. 2 divided by 2 is 1.
So is that just the answer?
And you could plug these in just like any equation, see if they actually work. Does 1 squared minus 2 times 1 plus 1 equals 0?
Is that the discriminant?
No, we never learned discriminant.
Oh.
It's not that important. The discriminant is basically the b squared minus 4ac. This thing under the square root. And if you solve that part, you know whether it's going to be a square root answer or a normal answer or not real answer. Number 19. Oh, and what are the A, B, and C for 19?
1, 4, and 5.
Okay, and if you plug those in the quadratic?
It would be negative 4 plus minus square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. And then that would be over 2 times 1.
Okay. Yep. And okay, Okay, this one is 16 minus 4 times 5, 20, which is negative 4. What happens when we get a negative under the square root? Doesn't work. We say it's, what do we usually say when we get a negative under the square root?
Not real.
Right, no real solution. And in Algebra 2, we'll change that to it's an imaginary solution. It's not that much, it's not hard. I mean, it's not any harder than this, let's put it that way. No real solution. And some calculators can do imaginary problems. Use quadratic formula. All right. Miranda, what's the A, B, and C on 21?
A is 1, B is -6, and C is 2.
Yep. And if we plug those in,
6 plus or minus 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2, and then over 2 times.
yeah. Okay. So let's see what we got. 36 minus 8 is 28. And the square root of 28 is 2 square root of 7. So, have you guys noticed the pattern when we get square root answers? When you change the plus to a minus, the answer doesn't really look any different. They're always like a plus minus of the same version. Okay, there is actually something we can do to this.
62.
All three terms, there's 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, on top and bottom are divisible by 2. So you could just divide by 2. Kind of think of it like distribute, like divide both of those by 2. So this would become 3 plus or minus square root of 7. And probably most of you have calculators that can do that automatically. I have a few. I think I lost some. You guys have any of my calculators? Which one?
For next one, would A, B, and C be 4, 3, and 3?
Well, the 3 is on the wrong side.
Right, so you
So they're at 3, so it actually be a 4, 3, and negative 3.
Thank you. Which one are we on? I'll write this down.
Well, 24 is about halfway. Should we? I like going past halfway though. That way,
We'll go to 26.
maybe 28.
Yes, we can use 27.
Yeah, we'll do 27, 28.
The 6 is supposed to be negative for the first one. Because it shows -1.
When you have negative 6, that's a positive 6. So B was negative 6. So when you have a negative, it makes it positive.
Almost put 2.
Alrighty. What number was that? 21? 23. Okay, Moses, what's the A, B, and C on 23?
3 to negative 5.
Alright, so if you plug it in, what do we get?
X equals -2, or yeah, plus or minus
Alright, 4 times 5 times 3 is 60, so this will be 4 plus 60 is 64. Square root of 64 is 8. Alright, since the square root worked out nicely, that means we can actually solve this. Negative 2 plus 8 is 6, divided by 6 is 1, and negative 2 minus 8 is negative 10 divided by 6, which reduces to negative 5/3. Okay. Well, 25 through 32 is like a combo of everything. There's basically two main ways to solve it. Let's say three. So either factoring solves it, or like on 26, just taking the square root of both sides would solve it. Or quadratic formula. If factoring or square rooting both sides does not solve it, you have to use quadratic formula. In 25, they already factored for us. So, Brianna, do you know what the answers would be on 25? It's kind of like number 1, basically. So, what x values would make those factors equal 0? So what could you put right there that would make this equal 0? You know what I'm saying? Just 7. Good. So it's like 7 minus 7 equals 0. Okay, so the other one said x plus 2. So, you know what could go right there to make it equal 0?
2 minus 2.
Well, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So, 7 or negative 2. Alright, Mallory. How could we do... There's kind of two ways to do this one. What do you think for 27? Okay, you could factor it because this is a square minus a square. Or because this is kind of a simpler equation, you could just get x squared by itself. Let's try that way. So how would I get x squared by itself here?
Add the 9.
Add the 9.
And then
Square root.
and then it would be 3.
A little bit up. A little bit off.
Plus or minus 3?
Yeah. Because negative 3 squared is also positive 9, so negative 3 would also work. Alright, yeah. Anyway, that's it. We'll call that the halfway point. That's probably close. It's good.
On number 26, would you like subtract the 16 to make it look like that? Or would you just...
Well, it's already on the right. You could just, it's like this, x squared equals 9, so you could just square root it. Yep. Well, you want to get the a, b, and c, you want to move everything to one side, right? So what would we need to do? Right. The minus 1 would mix with the minus 5. That's already there. Yeah, 4x squared minus 2x minus 6. Yeah.